Hi Amy. Alright, so here is Holden's reading, and what we're going to do is look at where we are, what he did with the majority of his time there, an important day with the relationships and the feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned with usually the time card, but we'll put this away, and I believe your other boy had this card too, which is interesting. It's the Atlantis Lemuria Ancient Times card. And, when themes come up like this with families, it's just something to take note of and to consider, because I shuffled these decks big time, between readings. And for this to come up again would just be something to keep in mind. Usually it does indicate a connection between the people of the family when it's in a family and there's similar cards. So just something to note. But anyway, in this case, it feels like we're actually going to Atlantis. I'm sorry I can't remember all the readings, but I'm pretty sure Quinn's was Lemuria. But if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But for this one, it feels very much like Atlantis. And so what Atlantis kind of implies, more than not, is usually Atlantis is a more aggressive energy, or a more what they call masculine energy, and Lemuria would be more feminine and more passive. And so we're going to Atlantis. It doesn't mean that the soul is aggressive or the soul is masculine. It just means that they're in an environment where that is what it's like there. Like, that is the consensus basically of the environment is what it feels like. So trying to see what else is going on here. We are looking at a it's a male life, but there's something about a very balanced with the feminine energy about this soul that we're looking at. So I kind of want to move forward before we start making connections with that. But we are looking at a much older soul, and it's just interesting. Some things came through when I was laying this down, so let's just get to it and see what's going on here. So what he did with the majority of his time thing. This is the healer card. So we're looking at someone who has healing abilities, and that can, obviously there are so many ways one can be a healer. So I'm just trying to see what he may have been doing, but I do know what's come through is that he's working with others. It feels like this is someone that is working with others. They have similar goals. They have similar talents or skills or passions or sensitivities. That's what it feels like, more like anything, is like they all have similar sensitivities and they are utilizing it together because there's something about empowerment with the group versus solo at this time. So what we can be, I'm still trying to see exactly what it is, but what you can be making connections with so far is even the fact of like feeling like Holden is an old soul. Something like that, in whatever way that, means or to you or however you can feel that out. But also this, something about when you put him with others, he may equalize the group, or he may be someone where he may be able to quiet the group or focus the group, or just the energy. This energy is very balanced, so he may be very good when it comes to like being in a more, not hostile, but more, like aggressive situation. He may be, his energy alone may be capable of kind of just like equalizing it, if that makes sense. Which it almost feels like it's like it feels like a gentle energy, and it feels like the kind of thing where it's almost like you don't want to put him where there's a lot of like noise and chaos and this and that. Almost like maybe he doesn't belong with that kind of, like environment where some kids are like, yeah, blah, and running around and loud, bleh. But if you feel that way, it's almost like that wouldn't be a bad idea for him to be around that kind of energy or environment, because his energy is useful to others, if that makes sense. So looking at a healer's soul, it's like you know, as healers like to what's it called, like be in an environment of like, you know, quiet and peace and gentleness, and where things are being I guess healed or resolved, you know what I mean? So they're not gonna generally want to go to places where there's a lot of like violence or aggressiveness or this or that, you know, things that are opposite that. But healers have an energy for a reason. Like their healing energies are for a reason. It's not just what they're doing with their hands or with their minds. It's their very energy of being alive and having a certain energy that comes out of them and helps with situations around them that might need that energy. That's why a lot of healers, when they're healing people, they get drained, right? So when you're doing your work and you know that work is coming from the heart and it's a passion of yours, you'll feel drained afterwards. It's because you're giving your energy out and you're basically kind of depleting yourself for the time, but it's a positive thing because it's what you're here to do. Like, you know, you're here, that's your purpose, is to help others or service others, if you're a healer, so to speak, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm feeling like this soul we're looking at is someone who has this energy, and once a healer, always a healer. And so I feel like we're seeing this life of him as a healer just as like kind of a message, or to show you once a healer, always a healer, so that he still carries this energy, and almost like as he grows up, he will learn how to handle himself very well, and he may actually become very good at being very diplomatic with people, being able to kind of maneuver or adjust the energy of a room or the energy of a group of people intentionally. Kind of his own little superpower, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see. It's very important also to realize, you know, he picked his family. He picked you as his mother, and his dad as his dad, and his brother as... He picked this family because he knew that that part of him would be nurtured in that way. And it's important that it is nurtured, because this kind of energy flow is going to be very, very useful and needed here during this time. So keep that in mind. Okay, now at the same time, I do want to say the thing about him being in groups and being around groups, and how it's obviously it's good overall for everybody. He also might be someone that doesn't want to actually go into the group in the first place. Like, he might be someone that's just like wanting to stay home. He might be kind of like just needing his space, or needing, you know, he might not outwardly say, oh yeah, I want to go do this or this with all these people, but once he's there, he'll feel better, if that makes sense. So he may be someone, you might see it now, you might see it later as he gets older, but he might need prompting, just like a little push to go and do something that he might just feel like, I don't want to do, you know, but once he's there, it's kind of like when kids don't want to go to summer camp. I don't want to go to camp. I want to stay home. I want to, you know, just be here, But then once they're at camp, they have a really good time. It's like that kind of thing. So keep that in mind, and keep making connections where you can, okay? All right. So let's go to the first important day, and this is a day of enlightenment. This is the Enlightenment card, and it usually means that there's a soul growth. There's an understanding. Something is happening where there's a aha moment. Can't speak today. Aha moment. And the relationship involved is the soul group. And the soul group actually feels like a group that he is working with with his healing abilities. And the feelings here is distant and removed, how people can feel, you know, distant or removed from the situation. So what this feels like, and when I was laying it down, I was getting little glimpses of this, but it feels very much like we're seeing someone who is missing something from his life. We're seeing this soul, this man in this place with this group of people, feeling like there is a missing link somewhere and that he feels like he needs to find it. So we're kind of getting to that. It's this theme coming up, which is kind of interesting. It's called I think it's called the hero's journey. It's like a literary theme, if you've heard of that. And it feels like that theme is coming up here. Oh, do you hear that airplane? Yeah, the airplanes like to fly really low sometimes. Anyway, so we're looking at the hero's journey here, and it feels like this soul is about to embark upon, or feels like they need to embark upon, a journey to what's it called? Find something. And it does have to do with the healing, and it has to do with his own inner, it's like an inner seeking, an inner wisdom, an inner something, like the feeling of knowing there's something more to what they're doing, but not knowing what it is. It's like that whole thing of not knowing, like we don't know what we don't know. This is a day where he is, all of a sudden it hits him, oh my gosh, we don't even know what we don't know about this thing that we're all working on together that is a big deal. It's not like these people are like monks hidden away somewhere in Atlantis, like in a cave somewhere. These are like it feels like they're thriving citizens. They're known, and it's also like they are, I feel like these like healers back then, it feels like there's an acceptance about them. They're not like how they are today, like how some people are like, oh, that's weird. Here it's like these guys are together, they're doing their thing, they're helping us out. There's something about this group helping out society, or helping out society. There's something, it's not just society, it's not like they're helping every person, but there's something about it's something about like okay, leveling up, that's the word. Okay, so it feels like this group is helping in some way with the leveling up of technology in this society, and there is something having to do with, there's something with energy and something, but it's something with energy. There's something. So, okay. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm trying to like articulate what it's coming, because it comes through like feelings that I'm trying to articulate it. But basically, it's almost like we're looking at a time when this soul is realizing that it's like the use of what they're working on is not the ultimate use that it could be, and that it's bigger than what they're working on, it's bigger than what it's being used for. But there's something missing, and it has to do with like, it's like something having to do with like okay, so the Atlantis energy, there's something very egotistical about it at this time. And yeah, I mean, Atlantis was said to be ideal and all that, but there's also something about an egotistical feel, and it's like this soul is on the brink of understanding the impact of ego on the technology and how it's almost like a hindrance, except this person can't quite articulate that the ego is hindering the advancement of this. That's what it is. He can't articulate it because he's in the society where the ego is kind of running amok, right? So it's the kind of thing where, how am I saying this? Okay, it's the kind of thing where when you're in it, you don't see it. You know what I mean? Situations in life, when you're in it, you can't see it. And then when you're out of it, hindsight hits you and you're like, oh, that's the bigger picture. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at someone who's in the picture, so they can't step out of it and see the bigger picture, but they know that they need to somehow step out of it in order to see the bigger picture. They know there's a bigger picture, but they don't know what it is. They can't articulate what it is, and it has to do with ego. Not necessarily the ego of this person, even though they're part of the whole, but it's like an overriding egotistical atmosphere So there's a soaking up of the energy because everyone shares energy when they're around each other. It's like a whole, a whole society behaves a certain way because they're all together. It's that kind of thing. So that's what we're getting this enlightenment day, where he's realizing, I'm in the picture. I need to step out and observe to see the bigger picture. That is what it is. Okay, so all that talking to get to that point. Okay, so that means how you can connect with that. You make connections on your own, of course, but how you can in other ways connect with that could be, for example, that Holden may be someone that is always trying to see the bigger picture, or there might be something very curious about his personality, where he's curious, or he asks a lot of questions, or he asks maybe unusual questions, or something about a dissonance with him and what's going on around him. In fact, with the whole group thing, if he's with a group or with friends or with other people, whatever it is, he might be someone that either points out or can feel or does feel like a dissonance occurring when he's not agreeing, when the energies are not agreeing. Okay, how am I I'm trying to, let me say this, I'm trying to say it like clearer. It's, for some reason I just cannot articulate clearly today. Something about where, if he's with other people, I guess what it comes down to is he might be someone that speaks, like says the truth of something that is uncomfortable. He might be someone that says something because it's honest, but it makes people uncomfortable because he calls them out on it, maybe not realizing at this young age that it is calling someone out. To him, it's saying the truth, but with it, like a child's mind, you don't really put your foot in your mouth yet till a certain age, you know what I mean? So he might be someone that speaks honesty, even if it embarrasses people, and he doesn't understand the embarrassment, because there's something about the ego that there's almost like that hero's journey I spoke about, I feel, was a journey of learning to wipe out the ego. And so when that ego is cleared away, there is no shame and there is no embarrassment, and there's none of that, because the ego is what brings shame and brings embarrassment to the forefront of our feelings. So when the ego is wiped out, then there's only truth left. So I feel like we're actually looking at a soul that speaks truth, that looks for truth, that demands truth, demands reality, demands to not have things sugar-coated. So you might find that as he grows up, he doesn't want things sugar-coated, or maybe will be able, when he's older, to respect when things are not sugar-coated, or prefers when things aren't sugar-coated or just put lightly, you know what I mean? Like, you might find that as he grows up, he just wants truth. He wants honesty. He wants real feelings, real emotion, real connection. That can be very important to him based on this. And so I'm going to continue. We're still in this day, because what's happening is we're seeing someone who, on this hero's journey, there's going to be a disconnect from the familiar, from what he knows, and from what up until now has felt right, is what it feels like. Because this distant and removed feeling, it's the feeling of, as soon as you are awake, like spiritually awake, you can't go back. So it feels like we're looking at someone who has had a spiritual awakening, even though he's already a spiritual person with the healing. It's an even deeper level of a spiritual awakening that puts him beyond his peers. And this feeling of distant and removed is the feeling of not being able to put yourself back in a box, it's the feeling of not being able to go back to what you knew. Like, things can never be the same again once you are awoken to certain truths about yourself, about life, about reality, things like that. So all of a sudden, this group he was working with, it's like he's looking at them from the outside and seeing them as a bit separate from him. Not better, just understanding separate. Like, okay, they're on their journey at this level, and now all of a sudden something has clicked in me that is putting me over here. So we might be looking at someone who you might see him growing up and going through certain phases where he'll be doing one thing with certain people, and then before you know it, he'll turn around and he'll want to be doing something else with these other people, and so, or by himself, or whatever it is. These phases of growth, you might be able to actually see it. It might not be very gradual. It might be oh, okay, something in him kind of clicked and he's done and wants to go on. Do you know what I mean? So with a lot of people or kids or whatever, we see them generally phase out of things, or gradually phase out of things. You just keep an eye for this person. You know, he might be someone that's like, okay, boom, done, next, boom, done, next, that kind of thing. So see how he changes his phases. That's basically something to keep an eye on, what I'm talking about for this as well. So there's a lot in this day. And also, by the way, you might have a little boy here who is already very empathic, in touch, sensitive. He might have imaginary friends. There's something very sensitive about this. So if he comes to you and he says that he saw a fairy, or he made a rainbow appear, or a cloud spoke to him, something about like with him, and like, you know, little magical things that kids say that we're like, oh, that's a cool imagination kind of thing. If he does that, it's because he's really super sensitive and he is able to feel out those different dimensional things. So keep that in mind. And it's also something wonderful to nurture, because we're looking at someone who is spiritually awakened. And those examples, I guess, are, yeah, they're kind of extreme, you know, but just be aware that you're dealing with someone who is sensitive. So you might see this also develop over time if he, I guess if he's focused in a certain way, he might maintain this. Because it's hard to sometimes in this day and time. But again, he did choose you for a reason, and the reason I feel is to, it's like not just nurture, you know, his growth, but also it's going to be something about like being able to help him stay open to possibility and open to like not be narrow-minded and not like conform is what it is. Like he chose you so that he wouldn't have to conform. Okay, so keep that in mind. At least that's what it feels like. So let's go to the next important day here. Here's the so long, farewell, until we meet again card. And this is just going off of what we were just talking about, where the hero's journey, okay, it doesn't always mean you have to like go and sail the seas and whatever. But in this case, here we're seeing a break apart from the group, and here we actually are seeing movement. It feels like we're seeing movement somewhere. And it's interesting because Atlantis and Lemuria existed at the same time. And I feel like we're seeing someone who's moving towards Lemuria, and how it's being brought through, to me, feels like it could be physically or it could be metaphorically, as though it's almost like it's like someone who is learning the ways of a more peaceable culture. It's like, because Lemuria and Lemurians and the culture and their thought process and their ability, whatever Lemuria is, it vibes with what he has gone through here. It's vibing more with what he's looking for, if that makes sense. So it's lacking the ego. It's giving him the platform that he needed here, that he's realizing the ego is keeping him back from something deeper and more fulfilling, and Lemuria, it feels like, has what he's looking for, metaphorically and physically. So it could very much be that he did in fact leave and went to Lemuria, because they were also aware of each other. Atlantians and Lemurians, they're aware of each other. They're not like completely separate, not knowing the other exists. They're very aware of each other. So it could be that he did actually go there, but at the very least, he was learning of it and learning the ways of it, because their nature, more like loving and gentle and understanding and less ego, their ways were, it was just more again in sync or vibed with this, his energy, his frequency, once he was awakened here. Okay, so keep that in mind too. Now the relationship card is the karmic card. So we're looking at someone involved where they come back through different lifetimes to learn from each other, definitely learning from each other here. And the feelings is here's the I can do it card, which is confidence. And so we're looking at someone that I feel he meets either along the way, because now that we're talking, now that I'm going through this, it feels like there is physical movement, and it's very, very likely he did go to Lemuria. And it feels like he's meeting someone there that is, I wouldn't say a teacher, but I would say someone who helped him continue on. Kind of like, you know how like sometimes we meet people that are just encouraging, and they see the path you're on and they're like, this is right for you. This is perfect for you. You're doing exactly what you need. Don't doubt. You totally are on the right path. You know, sometimes we get that doubty feeling, like he left everything behind to pursue a truth about like, what's called energy or inner wisdom, and the road to that journey is paved with doubt sometimes, a lot of times, because again, you don't know what's coming. So even if you are severely wise and awaken, it still doesn't mean you could tell the future. It still doesn't mean you know what's coming or what's exactly good for you or right for you, right? Those little doubts come in. And I feel like this karmic card is like the person he meets along the way that bolsters his spirit and helps him continue on and carry on. And it doesn't feel like they are together very long. It doesn't feel like this is going to end up being like someone that he knows the rest of his life, but it's someone that makes a huge impact on him. And that was the reason for them to be incarnated at this time, was so that they met. This moment was like destined to happen to help him carry on with his journey, so to speak. And so that's where the confidence comes in too, because it does give him great feeling and great confidence to move forward, that he is on the right path and to just keep going. And that was needed at this time. It was kind of like a platform, like a launch to the rest of his awakening, to the rest of his spiritual development and understanding and seeking of truth and all of that. So keep that in mind too, because karmic cards, a lot of times, these wonderful people that we meet, well, not always wonderful, but in this case it's wonderful. They come back and we, reincarnate with them, because they're in our soul family. So this could be someone that, it could be a best friend that he'll meet in this life again. It could be a guardian angel, earth angel they call it, like someone that will help him in life at a time when he needs it most. It could be someone in his family, someone that you feel helps lift him up in spirit, or is there like someone, if there is someone that is like always having his back. I mean, I know he's very young right now, so it's hard to kind of maybe see that, but as you watch him grow, maybe there is a cousin, or I mean, it could be you, it could be his brother, I don't know, but someone who really always has his back kind of thing. Or again, it could be one day in the future when there's going to be someone that has his back when he needs it most. That kind of person. It's likely they'll show up and pop up again, because this card came up for that. So usually that's what it means. So keep that in mind as well. However, we also might see someone who is, because of this, connection-wise, he could be very easygoing when you travel. He could, when he's older, want to travel the world, but the places he wants to go to when he's older might be places of like a great, like where there's like an energetic pull. Like he might want to go somewhere, like instead of going somewhere because it's like a really cool city and everybody wants to visit and it's a tourist place and that kind of thing, he might instead seek out like I'm trying to think, like a spiritual sacred, like he might want to go to the temple in Bhutan on the mountain because there, you know, he's energetically pulled to that. You know what I mean? Like these, he might, again, just keep in mind when he travels, he might want to travel to these spots that pull at him at a heart level versus, oh yeah, let's go to London and let's go to Tokyo and, you know, things like that. So keep that in mind. On the other hand, he also might be someone that really wants to stay at home because he left his home, and the leaving, there was a bittersweet feeling about it. So he, again, might love to just be rooted at home, but like we said before, he just might need a little bit of a push to go somewhere, and then once he's there, he'll be happy, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Now let's go to the death. Here's the accident card, and I feel like by the time that this happens, he has found a place, a new home, and the new home is very serene and much more quiet and less busy and very contemplative. It's almost like he went and found a place, it's like a hillside kind of thing, or a mountainside, and it feels like he went and became, it's like monastic living. It's like a hermit. It's like that, but it's not necessarily so, because it also feels like he's part of a community. But it feels like he found a community that understands this need of contemplation. There's something very contemplative about this. So I'm trying to see what's going on, because they're putting me like at a home, at a home, like where he lives. And I'm just trying to see what it feels like as far as accident goes. It almost feels like he did not take care of something and it ended up spreading like an infection. Almost like it's something very weird. It's almost like he got a cut and there was something like a bacteria and there was an infection. And he could have done something to completely clean it and clear it, but instead he's like, oh, it'll be fine. And then it's something with like traveling through the blood and infection spreading, bacteria spreading, so then something about a breaking down of cells, and then something about fatigue, something about breathing, and something about passing, almost like one last sleep passing. So it feels like he actually passed in his sleep, but it was an accident in that he could have lived years longer had he paid more attention to taking care of what he needed to take care of. So this kind of death could be metaphoric. It doesn't mean necessarily physically, like, oh, he needs to like watch it and take care of his stuff physically. I mean, it could mean that maybe he has a blood disorder or something like that. If you've noticed, you would know, you know, if he did something in the blood or something with like a sensitivity to certain bacteria or certain allergies he might have, because that can show up usually with like allergies of things, even like allergies to the sun or the grass, or simple things that you're like, really? People can be allergic to that? He might have those allergies. But if not, this can also be metaphorical as far as making sure that he takes care of things, so to the point where, because he died from it, you might notice as he develops that he might be OCD about certain things, or he might have the ability of becoming a workaholic, which isn't terrible if he loves what he does, but it's almost like because he didn't take care of business properly, it caused death. So therefore, logically, he reincarnates, it might be his priority to take care of things so that it doesn't cause death or doesn't cause destruction or disruption. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So keep that in mind as well. I mean, again, just a reminder about, you know, the blood thing or the allergies thing. Nothing to be worried about. You would know about it if he did, and if you haven't noticed it, then it's fine, obviously. So the what's it called? Lesson here. Simplicity, which is so funny and so fitting, because it's funny, we see this person here go from pretty simple already You know, it's pretty simple. Like, he's in a group, he does his work, he helps out, he, you know, whatever. But even so, it ends up where he is literally, it feels like a mountainside or a hillside, whatever it is, just meditating and, like almost like an accumulation of wisdom and an accumulation of knowingness and peace and serenity, and it's just like really lovely. And it's almost like people would even come to him for advice in life. It was something about so much clarity. By the end of his life, there was so much clarity. He was so clear-minded, and he knew himself so well. So also you might make connections with that, where this little boy you have might want what he wants or knows what he wants because this person here knew himself so well. So you might have a little boy that thinks he knows himself so well, but he's still like, you know, needing to relearn some things here. So it's almost like, I want to say, like, don't let him talk you out of, like, you know, certain discipline or whatever, because he still needs to learn. But he also really might know himself very well, or as you see him grow, he'll become very sure of himself, if that makes sense. But the simplicity card, again, okay, so it comes up to show you, yeah, the lesson here was simplicity, and he learned it amazingly. But it's also coming up because in his current life, it might carry over. You might notice that he is happy with simple things. He might just be happy, like, he might be able to preoccupy himself by just looking at the clouds or climbing a tree, or, you know, those little simple things. But it also, I feel, is more coming up for later on, like a message of simplicity, that when life, or it, well, I would say if, but it is when life becomes overwhelming in many ways, that it will become overwhelming, and for him and for all of us, of course, but for him, when it feels overwhelming, especially for this very peaceable kind of soul that we're looking at, that wants serenity and quiet or whatever, that it's always best just to remember that he has the simplicity, it's inside. So if something is overwhelming to him, it's about going to the inside. It's about going inside himself. It's about understanding that any solitude or serenity or what's the word, quiet, like I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, but everything he needs, he has already. That's what a lot of people don't realize. But for him, this is for him, he might be triggered or overwhelmed easily because life and society today in this time and place is so much more chaotic than it was here at all. So if you're finding that he does have certain sensitivities or is easily triggered by, I don't know, loud noises or chaos, whatever it is, to remember that it's like almost like, if anything, this could be for you to help teach him, even at this young age, certain kind of meditation. And that'd probably be the best thing for him, would, at this young age, to teach him meditation, even though you might not want to call it meditation. You might call it like, oh, imagination time. Let's go into your mind, and I want you to picture an ocean, or I want you to picture that you're climbing a tree, or, you know, like that kind of thing. Kids don't realize it's meditation. It's just, to them, a nice, fun time in their minds, but it's kind of like, it would be a good escape for him if he becomes overwhelmed or finds that, you know, it's too chaotic around him, to help him find internal structure and internal solitude that he can, like, go into himself, almost like helping him ground himself. So obviously these words sometimes kids don't understand. I mean, it'd be great if they did, and maybe he does. But in case he's just like a normal kid that doesn't understand meditation and grounding and, you know, all that stuff, make it a game for him so that it gives him tools that he can use later on, if that makes sense. And of course, only if that vibes with you, and only if that, you know, makes sense to you. But yeah, so keep making connections where you can. Hopefully you were able to make some connections here, and thanks for letting me read him.